All right, let's get right into it. We're going to be looking at a really important legal case out of India that, believe it or not, completely changed the financial rulebook for modern families going through a divorce. And it all kicked off with one couple and one very simple question. Seems like a pretty straightforward question, doesn't it? Well, this exact question ended up at the very heart of a legal battle that lasted nearly a decade and went all the way to India's Supreme Court. It was a real clash between old laws and a brand new family reality. So at the center of this whole thing were Padmja Sharma and Ratan Lal Sharma. And these weren't just names on a court document. We're talking about two educated professionals. Her, a lecturer at a government college, and him, a clerk at the Reserve Bank of India. Their divorce back in the 90s created a really modern problem that, honestly, the legal system just wasn't ready to handle. So how did the courts deal with it at first? Let's take a look at those initial answers, because they were really stuck in a more traditional, you could say outdated view of how a family is supposed to work. You know, this whole journey through the legal system was an absolute marathon, not a sprint. The first petition was filed way back in 1990, but a final, clear answer didn't come until the year 2000. I mean, think about that. That's an entire decade of legal limbo for this family. And these early rulings from the lower courts, wow, they really tell a story. The amounts awarded for child support started out so small and barely went up. The very first order was just 250 rupees per child per month. It just goes to show you the mindset at the time, which wasn't really grasping the true cost of raising kids in a world where both parents were working. And this quote right here from the High Court just perfectly sums up that old school thinking. The legal view was crystal clear. The financial weight of raising kids, that falls squarely, almost completely on the father. But the Supreme Court was about to have a very different opinion. Okay, this is where things get really interesting, truly groundbreaking, because the Supreme Court didn't just adjust the numbers a little bit. It introduced a whole new way of thinking for family law in India. And boom, there it is. This is the statement that turned everything on its head. The court just came right out and challenged that old patriarchal assumption head on. They said, look, it absolutely does not matter how much money a mother makes. The father is not the only one on the hook for supporting the kids. So what was their solution for making it fair? Well, the judges just looked at the reality of the numbers. The husband, Ratan Lal, was making about 5,850 rupees a month. The wife, Padmja, was making about 3,100. The court saw a pretty simple ratio there. He was earning roughly twice as much as she was. And this practical observation led them to create something now known as the proportional contribution doctrine. It's a really simple idea, but it was totally revolutionary at the time. If both parents have jobs, they should both chip in for their kids' expenses, but in proportion to what they each make. Simple math, really. So after figuring out that the kids needed about 3,000 rupees a month each, the court just applied its 2-to-1 ratio. That meant the father's share was set at 2/3 of that total, so 2,000 rupees per child, and the mother was responsible for the last third. So you're probably wondering, how did the court even justify this? Where in the law books did they find the support for such a modern, new idea? Well, turns out the answer was hiding in plain sight the whole time. The court pointed out this tiny but incredibly powerful difference in the wording of the law. One section says a husband has to support his wife, but another section, Section 20, says a child can claim support from their father or their mother. That one little word, or, just blew the door wide open for shared responsibility. And the court was also really smart about what maintenance actually means. It wasn't just about keeping the lights on. They defined it super broadly to include everything a kid actually needs to have a good life. Not just food and a place to live, but the full cost of education. We're talking fees, books, uniforms, and all their medical care, too. In another really clever move, the court didn't just set one final amount for the year 2000. No, they made the payments retroactive and they increased them over time. They basically said, hey, the father's salary went up during this decade-long fight, so his contribution should go up too. So it was stepped up gradually to reflect that reality. Pretty fair, right? So let's step back. Beyond this one family and their really long fight, what's the big takeaway here? I mean, why is this case still being talked about in law schools even today? The answer is actually pretty simple. This case was never just about one family. It was about the law finally catching up with society, By the year 2000, families with two working parents were becoming the norm, and this ruling officially put that social change down on paper as a legal precedent. And the impact was huge. This single case set all these powerful new precedents. First, it threw out that old idea of the father being the only provider. Second, it established real gender equality when it comes to paying for the kids. Third, it brought in this brilliant, common-sense idea of proportional justice. And finally, it confirmed that these support orders aren't set in stone. They can and should be changed if people's situations change. And all of that leaves us with one last, pretty big thought. The Padmja Sharma case was this massive leap forward, bringing the law into line with the world around it. It really makes you wonder, as our families and our society keep changing, what's the next big leap our laws are going to have to make?